Welcome back to Should I Flush That? Part 2. We're going to pick up where we last left off. We're going to jump on down to slide 10. But just as a reminder, this whole chapter is about water pollution and how our cells interact with the water around us. Our cells transport water, transport materials that are in the water. Our cells are surrounded in water because our body's made up of it. So really just want to look at a lot of these central problems again, which is how do the proteins in our cells really help transport good things in or bad things out of the body? And what's happening inside our cells when we aren't doing so well? What might be in the water around us in our environment that might hurt us or affect our survival? And lastly, what kind of things might be around us that impact not just humans but wildlife? So water pollution in general. So let's move on down to slide 10. Let's not waste any time. And slide 10 has the definition for solution, which we do need in our notes. It is a mixture of solute and solvent. If you're still confused by those concepts, please go back to our notes number 1, and that covers slide 9 and 8 and kind of reviews it. A solution is made up of solute and solvent. A solute is a substance dissolved. Example would be sugar or salt. And a solvent is the substance that does the dissolving. Now, this whole page, this whole picture here, is basically showing the blood, which is 8% of our body, if you can see that. And what it's basically showing us is that our blood is a solution because it's made up of water and a lot of things dissolved into it. Let's make the screen a little bigger so it's a little easier to see. And let's cover up that guy. Oh boy. Okay, so in our blood contains lots of things dissolved into it. 91% of our blood is water. Look at this. It says ID percent of body that is blood. So you can see right here, 8% of our body is blood. 8%. So if we were 100 pounds, 8 pounds of our body would be blood. If you're more than 100 pounds, well, maybe you got 20 pounds of blood in you. But 8%, whatever your weight is, 8% of that weight is due to blood. Interesting. So 8% of the body is blood. It says ID what percent of blood plasma is water. So if you break the blood up into two main categories, which is one called plasma, not sure much about that, but we can look at it in a minute. But half of the blood would be basically plasma, a little over half. And when we go to this, it shows us that plasma is made up of proteins in the blood. So they're doing something in there. And then it says water is 91% of the plasma. So apparently plasma is pretty much water and proteins. It says what's the percent of the blood plasma that's water? So it's 91% for number 2. It says ID the percent of nutrients dissolved in the blood. So what's the percent of nutrients dissolved in the blood? So this category right here includes nutrients. So this whole section, you got to go reverse here. So here's the nutrients in this category, and you got to go backwards, and the percent it shows is right here, 2%. So for number 3, you would write 2% of nutrients are dissolved in the blood. So most of the blood actually is something else. It's a lot of water, it's certain types of cells, proteins in the blood doing work. Only 2% of what's in your blood is actually kind of nutrients, things that maybe the cells need and that are dissolved into it. Okay, it says there's 7% of blood containing proteins. Right here. So 7% are proteins. It says proteins perform chemical reactions and they do work in the body. We know that they're part of our cell membranes. They transport materials. We know about receptor proteins. We know about enzymes. They do chemical reactions. It says hypothesize one function of a blood protein. So what do you think? What's one thing that a protein might do? Like, why would it even be in the blood? If we know proteins do work, why would that's their purpose, right? Proteins do work in the body. So why do you think we would have protein in our blood? Why? What do you think? So why do you think there's proteins in the blood? Give a hypothesis. An easy hypothesis is to say, well, maybe it's there for energy. Maybe it'll get digested later. But dig deeper. Try to think about, overall, proteins in general aren't just energy in the body. Think about the different functions of proteins. We mentioned some already. Try to identify, what do you think? So my hypothesis is, what might a protein do? What kind of work might it do in the body other than just be energy? What do you think? And make your hypothesis here. Good luck. All right. We're introducing ourselves to the concept of concentration. Concentration is the amount of solute dissolved in the solution. So it's how much solute has been dissolved in the solution. Example of this is mass dissolved in liter of fluid. So basically, the example is the mass dissolved in a liter of fluid. That's a common one. So grams per liter, or grams per milliliter, or milligrams per milliliter. So it's an amount in grams typically. So it's a certain number of dried substance in grams that's been dissolved in an amount of fluid or liter. Another example, common measure. So you could have grams per liter, or you could also do parts per million. And parts per million is a little wacky, but I'll show you anyways. So we have the simulation. It shows how much DDT chemical is dissolved in parts per million. So that gives this amount. So it's saying, 0.09 parts per, or sorry, 0.08 parts per million DDT has been absorbed into zooplankton. Parts per million is kind of a weird, strange calculation, but it's also based on grams of a dry solute that have been dissolved in a certain number of grams of solution. You can see this number here, the million. So parts per million is the ratio, and the ratio is grams of solute over grams of solution. That's the ratio. And it's the number of grams of solute for every 1 million grams of solution. So it's how many grams of something dry you've dissolved into a million grams of a solution. So basically what it's saying is how many grams of DDT have been dissolved in a million grams of the water around them. And in this example, it's 0.1 grams for zooplankton. So basically the zooplankton are basically absorbing almost 0.1 grams of DDT, which is a toxin, within the 1 million grams that are around them. We'll do this activity soon. Let's answer the questions for slide 11 now. Okay, so you take some sugar, you dissolve it into water. Is this a solution? Yes or no? Explain. It says number 2, it says one solution contains 3 grams of sugar. That's 3 grams. We're just saying that each sugar cube is 1 gram. The mass is 1 gram of sugar. The other contains 20 grams. This one. So number 2 is basically saying the left one contains 3 grams of sugar, and then for number 2 you'd also say that the right one contains the 20 grams of sugar. Alright, question number 3. So that's easy. Just left one has 3 grams, right one has 20 grams. That's all. Then it says number 3, it says each glass has 1 liter of fluid. So we're pretending that this glass and this glass, both of them, even though they contain different amounts of sugar, solute. Remember the sugar is the solute, right? So even though each glass contains different amounts of dissolved sugar, they're getting dissolved in the same amount of water. So 1 liter here dissolves 3 grams of sugar, and 1 liter here dissolves 20 grams of sugar. It says based on that information. So you don't, it says write the concentration in grams per liter. So for this one, for the left one, you could just put left equals. You could put 3 grams fraction sign per liter, just like you see here. So you'd write 3, so the one on the left, the solution on the left, would be 3 grams per liter. Now do this one on your own. Remember, it said the right one contains 20 grams. You just have to write it in this form. All right, number 4 said, which has the higher concentration? Remember, concentration is the amount of solute or dry ingredient dissolved in the solution. So all you got to say is, which one has the higher concentration or the more solute? And you need to explain it using these following words. Solute, which would be the sugar. Solvent, which is the liquid it's dissolved in. Dissolved, which is anytime something dry goes and breaks down and disappears into a fluid, it's called dissolving, right? And then concentration, which you could say this one has a higher concentration because it has more solute in the solvent, and you could just say what is dissolving in it. So use these words to basically explain that this one has the higher concentration. Good luck. That's slide 11. All right, we have slide 12 here. Slide 12 here has a screenshot of a cool simulation. The white particles represent water molecules. The green particles represent oxygen molecules. And the purple or pink represent carbon dioxide molecules. Now, if you haven't already guessed it, this is a plasma membrane, and you can see the channel proteins here. So it's a special kind of transporter protein that are just kind of like tunnels, and these proteins allow things to move in and out. And you can see that there's a particular concentration of water, oxygen, and carbon dioxide on the inside. So the carbon dioxide, oxygen are solutes, type of gas, but it's still solute. If a gas is dissolved in water, well, it's a solute. You can see it's in the center. And then on the outside, you can see you have a pretty high concentration of oxygen. There's much more green on the outside, so there's a high concentration of oxygen on the outside and a higher concentration of carbon dioxide on the inside. It says, which model shows a higher concentration of oxygen inside of the cell? You have model A, model B. Which one has more green solutes in it? Then you choose your answer. Then it says, which model shows a higher concentration of carbon dioxide outside of the cell when compared to the inside? Model A or B, which one contains more carbon dioxide on the outside of the cell? This is the inside, this is the outside, this is the inside, this is the outside. Which one has more of the carbon dioxide or pink particles dissolved? Is there more dissolved on the inside or outside? Which one has more on the outside? I'm sorry, in the inside. All right, this is slide 22. That's right, we're pretty much half done with chapter 8. Should I flush that? Notes. So diffusion, pretty easy. Diffusion just means that particles or solutes move from high concentration, where there's a lot of it, to a lower concentration. So if you have an area that has a lot of solutes or a lot of particles close together, then what you're going to find is they're slowly spread out to areas where they're less common, or they'll move out to areas. Particles naturally move. This is just something that happens in nature. Naturally flow or move to areas where they're less common, where they're at a lower concentration. Just like in this example, you have a really clustered amount of solutes here, a lot of these green particles, so this is high concentration, but they'll naturally move to the right where they're at a lower concentration, or where there's none of it at all. It says substances or solutes naturally flow from where they are common to where they are not. So things, if you cram a bunch of things together, they'll naturally eventually spread out. Just like if you stack up some papers, perfect stack of paper, it's a really high concentrated amount of paper, but eventually, yes, it will just slowly fall apart. They'll get mixed up. They'll end up all over their classroom or in your room. It's just natural. Things just naturally go from where they're high concentration to low. Right here it says, in your notebook, use the term diffusion, which we just learned here, to predict the flow across the membrane for things here, right? It says image A. So we got this one right here, okay? It says, is carbon dioxide more likely to enter or leave the cell? Carbon dioxide. Now, we have to count how many carbon dioxide we have in the cell, and we have to count how many carbon dioxide we have out of the cell. And then we'll know which direction it's going to flow or diffuse, because things naturally move from where they're most common or high concentration to low concentration where they're less common. So we have 1 carbon dioxide on the outside, and then we have 1, 2, 3 on the inside. So this cell in example A has a higher concentration of carbon dioxide on the inside and a lower concentration on the outside. Things move from high to low. So to give you an example here in A, you would say that carbon dioxide will diffuse out of the cell to an area where it has a lower concentration. There, you're done. Number 2, it says, video question, when salt water is added, so we'll go ahead and skip number 2, maybe we'll do this in class, but for now what I'd like you to do is, it says, why does oxygen molecules, the solute, flow into the cell in image B? So image B is a model, and it's showing you that the oxygen solutes want to go into the cell. Why? So you want to explain it using the definition here of diffusion. Good luck. Have a great day. I'll see you next time.